because everybody always talks about having top grades, good SAT scores. You need to have your certifications, your internship, and your leadership titles. But the truth is, today I will be going over my Harvard admissions file with you all, including the interview notes. And this is all here to kind of give you guys some clarity on what happened. When it comes to writing your essays and also doing interviews, the way you shoot yourself in the foot is by being general, right? So you can say, I love doing. Super excited to share this file with you all. It's basically going to be my entire admissions file, but mainly the interview notes. And the interview notes really show a lot about what admissions is looking for. My interviewer and I got along very well, and he wrote some very remarkable things about me. And you're going to see the comments and they're going to be great, but I also want you guys to think about why exactly I stood out so much to him. And I'll also explain it, of course. But I feel like it is such a great kind of way to see what admissions was actually looking for instead of just being told, right? Because you can go online and you can see all these different like blogs of former admissions officers or just consultants who have worked in the field for a while, but you can't ever really see what actually happens in the process. And this is a great way to kind of show you all. And it's also the work that I've been doing for the past 5 years. So I'm very, very excited to kind of share my expertise and under the breadth of my work. All right, we're going to get started in about a minute. Thank you all for joining. And if you haven't already, please drop your location in the chat as well as the grade level that your student is about to be in. And also, any questions that you all may have during the webinar, please feel free to drop them in the chat. There's going to be a Q&A session at the very end, but I will 100% go back to those questions at the end and hit those. So please drop your questions at any time. All right, couple more people joining right on time, and we can go ahead and actually get started now. So, hey everybody, welcome to the webinar. Today, I will be going over my Harvard admissions file with you all, including the interview notes. And this is all here to kind of give you guys some clarity on what happens in the Harvard application process and also a lot of Ivy League application processes. So you can prepare your child to kind of be ready, right? Now you know exactly what they're looking for, so you can kind of reverse engineer and work backwards to make sure that they stand out. So my name is Michael Torto. I graduated from Harvard in 2025 with a Bachelor's of Arts in Sociology. And I founded Ivy League Stories right when I graduated in 2025, which is my college admissions counseling agency. But I've been doing college admissions counseling for the past 5 years, right? I started in my freshman year of college, because I did a lot of tutoring in high school, which you will see in my admissions file as well. All right. But I did a lot of tutoring in high school, and I was trying to figure out how to kind of transfer those skills over to college, and I was also looking for an on-campus job, and it manifested me working with Harvard Student Agencies, which is an on-campus college admissions counseling agency. And my first year with them went really well. I had a lot of great success with the students that I worked with, so I started working for private agencies after that, and then it kind of all accumulated, the success, the testimonials all accumulated, and I started my own business. And now I'm working for some of the top agencies in the field, such as Empowerly and ClearPaths as an independent contractor. And I'm doing this full time now. Right. So I have about 5 years of experience, but I just launched my business, and I'm helping students kind of craft a well-told and coherent story, because that is what matters the most in college applications, which you will see in my mission file. Some of my own accolades are my personal statement was published in 50 Successful Harvard Application Essays. It's a book that you can get on Amazon. It kind of compiles a list of application essays from, I believe, 7 years of Harvard classes. The fifth edition was about 7 or 8 years ago. So they compiled this list and choose 50 of them that they feel were the best and portrayed kind of great stories. And mine got published in there. My essay also got published in the Crimson article, which is the Harvard newspaper, titled 10 Successful Harvard Application Essays. So it was narrowed down even from there, right? Which shows that in high school, I was a very avid writer, right? And I was very good at storytelling. And over the years, I've kind of built this skill and helped students write incredible stories of their own. Right. And I've also been doing Harvard Law and Harvard Business School essays, helping people get into grad school. And my analysis have been featured on the Harvard Crimson as well. And as I mentioned before, I'm an independent contractor at Empowerly and ClearPath, which are larger scale college admissions counseling institutions. So with my own private practice, I'm able to kind of pull from their resources all of the knowledge that they're giving me, all of the kind of intricacies that a smaller agency might not have. I'm able to get directly from them and use for my own students, which is super, super helpful. So over just this last cycle with the class of 2026, I kind of jumped right into it and had a bunch of clients and I had a bunch of success. I've had 25 plus top 20 undergraduate acceptances, including Harvard, Yale, Brown, Dartmouth, UPenn Wharton, Cornell Dyson, Vanderbilt, Johns Hopkins, U Chicago, Duke, NYU Stern, blah, 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 blah. The list goes on and on and on. It's been amazing, the success that I've been able to have with my students and the amount of trust that they are able to kind of have in me to help portray their stories in a great way, whether it's through like extracurricular building or actually writing those personal statements. I also do graduate school essays. I've had a huge lot of successes OL that are all on my LinkedIn. Harvard Law acceptances, Harvard Business, Columbia Teachers College, Vanderbilt Law, UCLA Law, etc. And I've also helped kids match with QuestBridge, which is a super competitive program. But once you are a finalist and you match with your school, you end up getting $250,000 worth of school tuition to use, which is basically a free ride for all 4 years. They kind of guarantee that, and you're a QuestBridge scholar for life. And I've been able to help 3 students reach that level of prestige. So this is the thing that you kind of rarely hear, right? Because everybody always talks about having top grades, good SAT scores. You need to have your certifications, your internship, and your leadership titles. But the truth is, if you're applying to a top college, right, especially the Ivy League, 75% of the people who are applying have amazing resumes, right? They have the grades, they have the SAT score. You are competing with people who are just like you. So in order to make yourself stand out, the only thing that you can do is have a better story than the next person, right? A story that's coherent, specific, and unmistakably your own is the one thing that you cannot fake, right? And that is what kind of moves the needle. And you see this during interviews, you see this during admission notes, which you'll see from my own. And my interviewer doesn't really mention any statistics, right? He doesn't mention how, he was top 10% of his class. He was the top 1 speech and debater in his state or nation. He remembers a specific kind of action that I took during our Zoom interview because it was COVID. And he mentioned how I had a trophy in the bag that I lifted up. And that is kind of one of the key things that sold him on me, which goes to show that it's really the detail and it's really the passion and your intellectual curiosity that kind of shines through in these interviews and through admissions and through your essays as well. So you want to make sure you absolutely hone in on those as a student, right? Which is kind of what I hope to cultivate within students, right? The proof is 100% in the detail, and you need to make sure that your students kind of reflecting enough and introspective enough in order to make sure that that detail shines through. So now we're going to read my file together, right? And the things that you're going to see are the reader ratings and their scores, right? So each school has a different way of scoring. I'll show you my scores, but I don't have the specific meaning behind them because they keep that very, very private unless you're from a admissions officer and they can't disclose that. But you also see my reader comments, right? What my admission reader said about my file, my alumni interview report, which is 4 pages that kind of go step by step what exactly made me stand out from academics, extracurriculars, and my overall rating. And then you'll be able to see the exact language, how my story shows up in the evaluator's real notes, and through all of this, hopefully you're going to learn how to nurture your child beyond their resume, right? How to nurture their story so that it shows just as clear as mine did. So now let us go ahead and open up my Harvard admissions file, what we have all been waiting for. So allow me to just switch my screen. Right, close this one out. Sorry, bear with me while I work out these kind of logistics. All right, here we go. All right, can everybody see that first screen? Thumbs up. Beautiful. Thank you all. So this is the first page, right? The first thing I want you guys to notice is, it has all my information on here, has my GPA. But one of the most important things is the program tier. And you see here how it says most demanding. This has to do with academic rigor, right? It has to do with the amount of AP classes that you're taking versus the amount of AP classes that are available at your school, right? They want to make sure that you're actually going forth and choosing to take rigorous courses, right? That is 100% something that they look at, and 100% something that stands out in the top colleges, right? Because if you're not pushing yourself to take these AP classes, to take these college level courses, or whether it's like a dual enrollment course at a local community college, they have no way of showing that you can handle the course load at a college institution, right? So that is one of the very first thing that shows up and something to keep in mind, right? You have the top two curriculars that they place, which is really important because you want to make sure that you're not scattered everywhere, right? Because they want to see that you focused on two specific extracurriculars that really stand out and really show a lot about you. And then here are the ratings that I was talking about. You're going to see the ratings of my alumni interviewer and how those are ranked. It's between like 1 to 5, I believe. But these ratings, when it comes to the specific college admissions counselors, are very unique, right? And the placements are, you never really know what they are specifically, but it's kind of corresponded with the alumni interviewer. So it'll give you a lot of clarity after that. So first things first, when it comes to your extracurricular grid, you have about 10 slots to put activities in your Common App. And this is exactly what these are. You want to start off with the activities that you have put the most effort into, that you have excelled the most in, and that you've had the most impact and contribution. For me, it was speech and debate, right? I was president of my speech and debate team my last 2 years, and I did amazing, right? I had a lot of trophies. I had a lot of accolades. Sorry. It's interesting. I don't know what I just clicked to make this Zoom. Sorry, give me 2 seconds while I figure this out. But there we go. Beautiful. Not beautiful. All right, so I was beach and debate captain, and that was my lead extracurricular, right? You want to make sure you're a pointy person when it comes to college admissions, which means you have 1 or 2 activities that you put a lot of effort into and that really show your character, right? And that was speech and debate for me, and you'll see my interviewer talk about it, but not necessarily talk about my success, but about my impact. I had an internship with Audible, which is synonymous with, a program like BetterMind Labs, where you're kind of working on research or you're doing kind of shadowing or volunteering in a very kind of career-oriented field. Community service, where I was a volunteer. I was a publicist for National Honor Society. I was also an AP Language and Algebra 2 tutor in my school, but I really was very, very impactful, right? Because you can always say how, you tutor students, and that's something that's very, very popular when it comes to college admissions. It's a very popular extracurricular, but you have to be able to show your impact, right? Whether it's through the amount of students that you helped or through your teacher recommendations, and make sure that the people that you tutored for can actually see the value and write about it well when your recommendations come out, and you'll see how my teachers did so in the next page. I also worked as a cashier at ShopRite, which is something that surprises a lot of parents sometimes. A part-time job is actually very, very, very beneficial for college applications, especially if you're spending your summer doing not too much, right? This was a COVID summer. Everything was getting back into like the spick of things, and I decided, I wanted to use my time in a productive way, so I got a part-time job as a cashier, right? And obviously it doesn't sound like the most prestigious thing, but it was absolutely a show of me having responsibility and having the consistency to be somewhere 15 hours a week for 50 weeks in a year. Right. I was also in the International Thespian Society for Theater, which connects to speech and debate because I did a lot of competitive acting for speech. So you see that correlation there. And I also worked at a uniform shop. Right. So not the most like super impressive extracurricular track, there are definitely students that I've worked with before who are doing tons of amazing things. But again, the amount of energy that I put into my Audible internship over the 3 years, as well as my speech and debate team, really, really helped me stand out as a person. So now we're going to get into the specific notes and comments that my admission officers left. Right. So their initials are here. KGF was one officer, and then RXB was another. These admissions officers don't talk to each other at all. Right. You get your first read, and then they send it to a second admission officer to do a second read for like a double confirmation. So KGF said, this is a North Star Lincoln Park, not the same as North Star Washington Park. And before this year, only one prior applicant, right? So they very much make sure that they're keeping track of who's applying from which school. Michael is the presumed valedictorian at this North Charter, and he has done so in the context of essentially living alone while his mom works. See the personal essay. He's a talented leader of the speech team, holds an Audible internship, and the support really hammers how impactful his tutoring has been. He has done this without question, without complaint, without incentive. He has simply done it to be of service to others. Right. So this is really key, right? That support that they're talking about is not me, it's my teachers, right? It's the recommendations that came from the teachers that I've helped, and that really helps to solidify the activities in your extracurriculars, right? And that is exactly what I mean by having a clear and coherent story for college applications, because these admissions officers are getting thousands of applications a day, and then they have to read through all of them, not a day, sorry, through a cycle, and they have to read through all of them, and they need to make sure that the student that they're letting in have a very clear impact, right? And when you say, okay, I did tutoring and that's in your activities file, and then you have a teacher who also says his tutoring has been absolutely amazing, you get that double confirmation and it makes them all the more likely to admit you into their school, right? The teacher recommendations read much warmer and stronger than the coding suggests. A gracious, brilliant, thoughtful altruist who isn't afraid to shake things up in pursuit of a better future. With a confirming interview, a strong case, right? So again, you are in a pool of students who have great scores, great GPAs, and the only thing that makes you stand out is your story, right? You can show your story through your essays, or other people can tell your story for you through the recommendations, right? So those are two things you absolutely want to make sure you're working towards, right? And that you're building relationships with these teachers and these people who are going to write your recommendations so that they can speak to your character and make you stand out from the application pool that has amazing scores and amazing resumes already. My second admissions officer said, I'm bumping up a bit all around as I think the school is trying to tell us how special he is. This is a kid who has essentially done everything on his own for the last 3 years, and it's amazing what he has been able to accomplish. This feels like a real opportunity, and I hope the interview goes well. Right. So again, I wrote my personal essay about how my mom worked a lot. My dad wasn't really in my life. So I was very much alone for a lot of my time in high school. And it wasn't a sob story at all, really. It was kind of a motivational story and a story of how much I appreciated my mother's sacrifice. Because as contrary to popular belief, sob stories are not very helpful when it comes to college admissions, because you absolutely have to show how you were shaped as a person, right? And if all you can say is that something really sad happened to you with no kind of shift about how you were shaped into a person who's going to contribute greatly to your college society, then your personal statement is not going to work, right? So you 100% want to make sure you are adding the value, right? You're adding how this experience, even though it might have been unfortunate, is key to your development, right? And not every story that is great is a sob story. I have a ton of essays from students who have nothing really sad to write about, but have a lot of impactful things that they've done, and those work just as well, right? So if you're thinking about personal statement writing right now, the thing you should write about is the most impactful moments in your life and how those have shaped you, right? That never goes wrong if you follow that path. Now, on to my interview. Right. So in this interview, I believe 1 is the strongest score you can get. Then it goes to like 1 minus, and then 2 minus, up all the way to 4. 4 is like the worst score that you can get. So they kind of grade you based off of a couple things, right? Academics is going to be one that we see later. They extracurricular, work involvement, family involvement, community involvement is another, and then personal qualities is the very first one. So my interviewer rated me a 1 on personal, a 1 on openness to new ideas and new people, right? They rank it as like truly unusual. So this very much kind of cements my fact of you need to be unique, right? They want to see that you are unusual in the way that you aren't just like every single student who's applying, right? Your uniqueness is your number one kind of superpower when it comes to these interviews and when it comes to your writing and when it comes to your recommendations. They want to see that you are different, right? Potential contributions, college life, I got a one. What kind of roommate would this student be? I also got a one, right? So they're thinking about all these different things as they're interviewing you, which is super important to understand. When they're also asked to kind of give a couple of words to describe student. My words were balanced, mature, leader, passionate, empathetic, and compassionate gravitas. All right, and then the notes start with him saying, of all the remarkable candidates I've met as an alumni interviewer, Michael Torto is by far the most impressive. Right. So off the bat, very kind of very nice. This is actually like one of the best interviews, like one of the best compliments I've ever received in my life. And this whole file kind of he does a lot of praising, which is great. But and I think that the most important lesson is why that praise comes, right? Because he doesn't even talk about scores or stats as much, like I say, right? It's a lot about character. So I want you guys to definitely focus on that section, and please feel free to drop questions about specific things and specific things that he noticed and why you think, or any question that you have about how exactly I made that come across. So he says how he exudes a quiet strength that demonstrates why he will become a leader in his field. From the very first interaction to the final follow-up, he demonstrated a mature understanding of what it takes to get a job done. He is not only passionate, but effective at telling stories that are important to him and to society. And Ivy League stories, right? This is something that I've actually developed over time, and is definitely a passion of mine and something that I'm very skilled at and very good at ever since I was in high school. He is not only passionate, but effective at telling stories that influence him in society. If he pursues his interest in public speaking and broadcast journalism, I have no doubt he will be effective at mediating between the world and me to have an impact at making the world a better place. So that was my original career choice that I thought I wanted to do. Because as you know, when you apply to college, they always ask you like, why this major? And I thought I wanted to go into like broadcast journalism. And in a way I still do, but just not in the kind of formal way. So my kind of dreams have changed and shifted as every college student kind of does as they go through the time of college. But it's really important that you have something solidified that shows like you have a clear idea of where you might want to go when you do hit college. He spoke eloquently and with profound purpose, talking about the impact of the pandemic on him and his classmates and the mental health of kids trapped in toxic households trying to figure out their own place in the BLM movement. I think this concern demonstrates his unusual ability to extend his personal concerns to more broad social concerns of his peers and try and do something about it with hope and vision. He communicated effectively with his passion without volume or resort to base emotion. He is quite charismatic, but I took a few days to let his message sink in for me, and the content has staying power. He would be a considerate and inspirational roommate with a keen sense of what is going on for other people and when to get involved. Right. So you can also see a very key part of my just personality here, because as I told you all, I majored in sociology when I went to Harvard, and I very much was really excited about learning about social issues, whether it be income inequality, racism, social injustice, etc. And that really showed through my interview. Right. So I think one of the best things you can do for your children and as a student in general is making sure that they have a clear sense of discovery throughout their high school process, figuring out who they are, figuring out what they like to do, what interests them, so that when the time comes to really talk about it and really like kind of exemplify why they think college would be a great fit for them, they can do so through like the experiences that they've lived. And it can very clearly show through interviews and through admission files. He said, I would expect he would be a leader in house and campus activities. I suggested he look into Phillips Brooks House. He has demonstrated leadership prowess in his school senior committee where he was elected by his peers out of 144 highly competitive students. He clearly exudes character that appeals to his classmates. He has a rare ability to put himself in someone else's shoes and see troubles without judgment from another perspective. He spoke about specific classmates who were struggling in school. One girl who was not making the grade in a highly competitive academic environment and is now a top 50 student showed he knows where people are is not necessarily where they end up. And you never know what might be going on at home or inside a person, so their performance may not reflect their ability. He also spoke about his plan to set up a brother-to-brother peer mentoring program to peer juniors and seniors with freshmen and sophomores who are being disruptive. He mentioned that a nice, good kid who was always getting in trouble and how things can go awry when in a destructive group. For the good, for the good of the kid and the school, he wanted to get them set up straight. Right. So two very specific examples. This is another thing. When it comes to writing your essays and also doing interviews, the way you shoot yourself in the foot is by being general, right? So you can say, I love doing community service because I love helping people out. I think it's great to give back to your community, but that is a textbook general statement. You want to absolutely have specific experiences from your life that helps to kind of convey your argument, right? And I had two that I told them about here. The more specific you can get, the better, because it gives them a sense of reality, right? It makes them know that what he's saying to me right now is real, and I believe him because he has done specific things that have shown this value that he's trying to like convince me that he has, right? So very, very important kind of factor there. Make sure you're always specific when it comes to essays, interviews, etc. Have specific examples to show. Extracurricular, athletic, community, employment, and family commitments, right? So this is a whole thing. It's about your commitments outside of school. His commitment to his public speaking is clearly genuine and not for the resume, right? They're looking for this, right? So it's very important that things that you do, that you put a part of your resume, have depth, right? Because if you don't have the depth, they're going to see that, because you're not going to talk about it with passion. You're not going to talk about things that you've done in order to elevate that kind of thing on your resume, right? If you're getting a certification today, are you going to work on that certification after you get it? Are you going to work in the same field? Are you going to expand on it, etc.? You need to make sure that the activities that you're doing are genuine, right? And they have a layer of depth that they're able to see through your application. He spoke of it coming from a deep desire to tell stories between the world and me with hope and vision and emotion. His school is laser focused on academics, and he mentioned no sports and decried the lack of student clubs, but he found the public speaking circuit in his sophomore year and never looked back. He has enjoyed almost immediate success, demonstrating natural gifts that he has built on these, and he has built on these with hard work, great dedication, and focus. He has won awards at the national level as well as topping the charts at state and regional competitions. His recognition in dual interpretation suggests to me that he works well in small groups and is sensitive to other peers as well as judges. I asked him to what does he attribute his success. He replied, I don't get nervous in front of a lot of people. I think about how to make the judges feel what you are saying. I can well believe he does this to a remarkable degree. This was my first Zoom interview, but I felt the same level of engagement at a distance as I have sitting in the library with a candidate. I consider this communication at a distance no mean feat. This public speaking before a large audience and judges clearly brings him great joy and is not just for the success, acclaim, and trophies that he earns. This joy comes from something inside him, finding out what he is meant to be doing. That is key, right? You want to seem like a person, right? And you want to seem like a growing, developing human. So you want to make sure that you do like the things that you're doing, because it shows, right? It absolutely shows. And if they see that you're just doing things for the sake of security or to get accepted, this is something I talk to a lot with my kids who want to go into finance. A lot of times, kids want to go into finance because they want a good job, to get money, right? But that is absolutely the wrong way to go about searching for your college major and talking about it, right? Because he can tell, like your interviewer, your admissions officers can tell right off the bat if you actually are interested in economic theory, or if there's like a social component to why you're interested in finance versus if you just want to make money. And they're 100% going to go for the candidate who actually cares about the topic, right? So you have to make sure that your interest is showing, right? And even if you're doing great at a specific thing, if you're a robotics champion, if you're a speech and debate champion, you need to make sure that your story goes deeper than just the trophy, than just the winning and just the trophies. He continues to say, I hope he will consider Phillips Brooks House or writing for the Harvard Crimson or HBR, or explore theatrical productions as well as the student radio station as ways to feed the fire that burns within him. He may not have had such opportunities in his school, but he might flourish and contribute to them in important ways. All right, so now he talks about academic rating. I got a 1- for the overall rating, but I got a 1 for love of learning, and then a 1 for intellectual curiosity, and then a 2 for intellectual originality. Right. I think the 2 is the lowest score I ever got. And he kind of explains why I got a 2 for originality, and it comes here. He says how Michael is an all-around talent that could excel in many different fields. I think this makes him an excellent candidate for a liberal arts education in general and Harvard in particular. I feel that it is important that he have the opportunity to explore knowledge widely and not get tracked too soon into pre-professional grooves if he so chooses. I would not be surprised if his interests evolve as a college student in a stimulating environment, right? So my interviewers, these people are trained, right? That's all I will say, because he says things in this kind of in these notes that I actually ended up doing in college, and I did not read this until my junior year. Right, my path did change. I did explore a lot while I was at Harvard, and I also did do PBHA. I wrote for the Harvard Crimson here and there. But I just like this is just goes to show that these people who are officers and interviewers, they absolutely know how you as a person might fit into their college. So they will either, based off your interview, they'll see who you are as a person. That's why it's always important to be 100% authentic and genuine, so that they know if you are a right match for their college, right? Because as he says, like, Harvard is a liberal arts college. It's not a super heavy research school, right? That's more so Princeton. But if you are a student who's kind of exploring fields, of overall well-rounded talent, that's where you applying to Harvard would work in your favor, right? And you can absolutely see that during the interview with these students, but you have to be able to show like that full version of yourself. He talks about his decision to shift his focus from computer science to broadcast journalism as a desire to have greater social impact. I think there are many ways he could fulfill this mission, and he has just begun to explore more options. Clearly, he is an all-arounder who can excel at whatever he chooses, but his interests were impacted his sophomore year as he became involved in public speaking. Although he claims to have come late to the pursuit since he did not participate as a freshman, he clearly has a gift and natural talent, and so has enjoyed almost immediate and even increasing success at the regional, state, and national level in dramatic interpretation and declamation categories. I asked how his family felt about his decision to public speaking. He said, "My mom was worried at first that all the time in preparation and competition might interfere in my academics, but she was pretty happy when I started bringing home trophies." At this point, he flashed a 1,000-watt smile and turned behind his chair and hoisted a trophy that was about as tall as him. He has charm and good humor, as well as wit and impeccable delivery. All right, so I vividly remember this part of my interview, and obviously you're not going to be home for your interview probably because you're going to meet in person, and you can't just like pull out a trophy from your living room. But the key takeaway from this kind of experience is to just be human, right? And to show yourself fully, right? It's not a job interview, right? They just want to know who you are, right? So whether it's like, oh, if it comes up, right, and you have like a picture in your wallet, that of like something that really motivated you through high school, show them that, right? Or explain it to them, right? You don't want to just be textbook answering their questions. You want to kind of show your personality and who you are through this interview as well. Right. And that is one of the things that stood out most to him. I talked to him after. He was like, that was kind of the thing that solidified it for me, because it really did show a certain amount of kind of maturity, but also understanding of the sacrifices that I had to make during high school and how they paid off. That said, I would not be surprised if he chooses a career in politics or media rather than academia. Compared to the high standards of Harvard applicants, I have not seen evidence of strikingly original thought or research at such a young age, although they may exist. Some of his theories are appropriate for high school students, and so it's hard to say whether or not he would mature into a Harvard faculty member if he so chooses. I suspect his goals lie elsewhere, and that he will make an impact in the world of action rather than thought. It would be wonderful if he could have 4 years of pursuing knowledge for its own sake before committing to his present career path of broadcast journalism. I would not be surprised if he found new intellectual passion for politics or theater, but even if he sticks with broadcast journalism, he will bring to it a richness and fullness of intellectual engagement and rigor. Right. So here is where that intellectual originality score but two comes in. Because when I was in college, I didn't do any research, right? I was very much a humanities kid. And doing research wasn't something that was very prominent in my school. Right. So I didn't necessarily have like these huge kind of philosophical thoughts, even though I got there once I was in college. So he was very right about like the fact that they did exist. I just haven't kind of fostered them. But this is like the weakest point, right? And obviously sometimes families believe to get into Harvard, you have to be like doing tons of groundbreaking research, be published in the journal, and that is not true, right? Because there are students at Harvard that are like that, right? But if you have strengths elsewhere and you're able to show that, right, they can very much overlook different parts of your application, right? So that is kind of like the transparency here of like my weakest point, but how it wasn't even that much of a detriment to me because he understood my character in totality, right? And how that wasn't something I was necessarily focused on, even though it was a gap compared to other Harvard students. Now we get into the overall rating, and he rated me a 1 overall. And this is again where he gives me a very nice compliment that like I should probably have this framed in my room at some point. But he said there are circumstances that affect the student and myself. Nevertheless, I feel that he clearly rates a 1. He says to say that he is one of this year's best is, in my experience, clearly not enough. He is the best that I have ever seen. Right. And he says this even when he acknowledged that my intellectual originality isn't up to par with other Harvard students. But again, there's very, very different parts of your interview and of admissions that they're looking at to determine who you are as a person, right? And if you're able to kind of show that you have an understanding and you've discovered yourself and you have a clear kind of path that you wish to explore and that you're just a stellar applicant, you are able to kind of stand out within amongst the crowd, right? Regardless of what your intellectual research has been, etc. Right. So I want very, very, very kind of like heartfelt compliment there, but I want to make sure that we're taking the actual like meaning behind it away. Right. Coming as he does from the challenges of Newark makes this all the more impressive to me. I live less than 10 miles away from him and his school, and yet I inhabit a world apart. I cannot fully appreciate the challenges he has had to overcome as a young African American man focusing on outstanding achievement. I suspect he has had to be above reproach in situations I have never had to worry about. I have taken some time to reflect on my own feelings about this and my response to his undeniable charisma. I can well believe he had a visceral appreciation of nice, good kids getting into trouble and needing to be set straight. He has grit, and you can feel it when he speaks to you. Oh, there we go again. 1 second, y'all. Sorry for the technical difficulties. Allow me to unshare my screen and then pull this back up. But I hope this has been insightful so far. Please make sure to drop your questions in the chat because this is the last page before we go into our Q&A. And then I have also a kind of like surprise / gift at the end that I would love to show you all. So yeah, just stick tight for the very end for that. And then we are back live. And we're just gonna make this single page. All right, so he says he has a grit and you can feel it when he speaks to you. I feel that it is challenging to capture the full extent of the student's desirability for admission to Harvard, but I have done my best here. Please feel free to contact me if you have any further questions. All right, and then he talks a little bit about my charter school, but this isn't necessarily like important. And then he says how the meeting was a rare and rewarding exchange of ideas, how there's an easy flow of conversation, and I was a diamond in the rough. So that concludes my Harvard admissions file. But I would love to answer any questions. And I also, for my own business, I do free profile review calls, right? And I'd love to have you and your student on a call where I completely, for 30 minutes, I have you fill out a form prior to the meeting. And I use that 30 minutes to kind of talk about where your child is excelling and what exactly they should be doing in order to be competitive for top school admissions, right? Because I take it that all of you families are kind of working towards your child making it into like their dream school, and admissions is very, very, very rigorous nowadays, right? It's very competitive, and you need to make sure that you stand out amongst the applicant pool, right? And through my experience doing college admissions counseling as well as my Harvard interview, I went through the actual process myself. So one of my professors in school always said that there's no better person to know about an experience than somebody who's understood it by going through it. Right. So I 100% kind of know the field. I work for Empowerly. I've literally been helping students do this for very, very long. And I'd love to kind of give you all some free feedback, right? And valuable feedback about what your child can do in order to bolster their chances for admissions. So please feel free to book a call You can scan this QR code. I'll also put a link in the chat in just 2 seconds. But yes, please also feel free to start dropping questions in the chat about anything about my specific admissions experience, anything in terms of recent admissions experience and students that I've gotten into college so far, etc. Based on your experience since getting accepted at Harvard, what would you suggest for a student who is leaning towards tech, research, and engineering fields? So, first and foremost, right, starting out, make sure you're getting exposure, right? Whether it be your robotics team or whether it be like doing certain like AI internships or partnerships with local kind of businesses or firms, whatever the case may be, or professors. You know, shadowing professors working in tech, research, engineering fields is a great way to go as well. And then you have to have some original thought, right? Because I think the thing that we see a lot today is how, especially in the computer science field, is very oversaturated, and it's not enough to just have a computer science degree, right? And that is 100% because the people who are getting the degrees now are people who have original thought about tech, right? And about research and about engineering. So now you have to do kind of a bit of soul searching and thinking about what exactly about tech captivates me and what kind of things do I want to work towards possibly developing, right? Or possibly helping to innovate. And through those kind of like, through those that time that you have throughout high school, whether it's working through, you know, robotics or doing research, kind of try to align it with exactly what you might want to pursue in the future, right? Or a bigger change, or just it's a matter of like scaling, right? You need to absolutely be more than just somebody who does well in robotics at this point. You need to show kind of original thought. You need to show kind of capability, and you also need to be able to show that you are ahead of the curve than everybody else who might be interested in engineering and research. Does that make any sense? And I'd love to talk to you about your child in particular, about specific things that they can do in a free profile review call if you're up for it. What would you suggest for a student going into toxicology or biochemistry? I love that. So a very unique field, which is great, right? Well, not necessarily biochem, but like toxicology specific in particular is very, very unique. I would say get opportunity, right? Something I do with my kids a lot is whether it's like at a local hospital, like especially for my pre-med kids, if they have a specific specialty that they know they're very, very interested in, we go and we search for like hospitals or private practices that have people working in that specialty and email and have them show up in person to say, hey, we would love an opportunity to just kind of like shadow you, right? If all we can do is shadow you, that'd be great because we're still getting a bunch of kind of knowledge about what you're doing, and that knowledge can evolve into, you know, independent research or, you know, working for somebody else, right? The opportunity is there as long as you have that interest. So I would say getting some like real life experience in the field, right? Whether it's again local professors at like state schools, community colleges, etc., are great because they often need like, you know, just volunteer free work, free help to help kind of like organize things in their lab or whatever the case may be, and you get real good experience there, right? So that is my number one kind of feedback, right? Get some real world experience. Do admissions officers care more about what an applicant has already done or what they convincingly plan to do in the future? Okay, this is a great question. So most of it is what you've already done because by the time you're doing your interview, you're in your 12th grade year and about like what, November, or yeah, about November if you're doing early decision. And then if it's regular decision, you're having your interview around like February. So you need to talk about the things that you've already done, right? Because there's not much of high school left. But then the trick is you can use what you've already done to talk about your future plans, but you need to make sure that they align, right? So if you did speech and debate, you did great at speech and debate, right? And you have like this form of acting that you love, right? Or this form of theater that you absolutely love, and you didn't get a chance to do it in high school, but you want to kind of put on a play that you've been writing. That is something that you can absolutely tell admissions officers that make you stand out, right? If you say, I'm writing a play right now in this specific theater form, and I can't wait to put on a production, I probably won't be able to do it in high school, but it's something that I'm definitely looking forward to doing in college. That's great, right? But you have to show a past of already doing things having to do with that, right? So that they can believe you, and so that they can believe that, oh, what this person is saying that they'll do, they actually will, right? That's the only thing that makes a difference between somebody who says they're going to do a bunch of amazing things versus somebody who says they're going to do a bunch of amazing things and somebody believing that, right? So that'll be my answer to that. Does that answer your question? Or is there something specific you want me to hit? And I also just dropped the link to the free profile reviews in the chat. I am, just because it is the midst of application season, and we're in July, and I have a lot of kind of rising seniors. I am only taking about 10 to 15 more kind of applicants this cycle. So please book the free profile review is absolutely no commitment at all, right? It's a way for me to give you value. But if you are interested in services and everything, please book that review. We'll talk about the services after and how we can help craft your child's essay, and also their if they're not a rising senior and they're a rising junior instead, how to make their extracurriculars align, right? I know a lot of you are BetterMind Labs parents, so you're already doing great in terms of getting your child certifications, making sure that their activities are, profound, but you also want to make sure that they all connect, right? And I'm very good at helping them all come together in a coherent sense. So yeah, please book that free profile review call, and we can definitely talk and give you some value that'll definitely help with your student and their development, regardless if you continue with services or not. How do you recommend showing personality in my essay and making it sound convincing or inspiring and not just accomplishments? Great question. Great answer. Great question. Sorry. My answer to that would be, it takes a lot of soul searching. It takes a lot of self-discovery. And that's something that I do a lot in the sessions to my students, because as a high school student, you're not thinking about that, right? You're thinking about making great grades. You're thinking about performing the best in your sports, your team, etc. And you're not doing a lot of reflection about, okay, what does this mean to me? I kid you not. Every single one of my meetings, I ask my students, okay, why are you doing this? Why do you find this exciting? Why is this impressive? And we have to kind of walk around in circles until we hit kind of this one like topic that they really enjoy, whether it has to do with like how they were raised, or how this one activity helped give them like a sense of joy because of blank, right? But it's a matter of like a whole bunch of question asking and digging deep, right? And through there, you're able to kind of like show what kind of personality traits, what emotions you attach with your accomplishments. And then you're able to kind of show your personality and make it a whole story and make it convincing to admissions officers, right? So that is, it takes some soul searching, right? So if you want to do it yourself, ask yourself why, right? That is and like keep asking yourself why, right? If you say, I like robotics because I like putting things together, why do you like putting things together? Like, where did that start? Right? And then keep kind of going deeper until you find a real personal connection to the things that you're doing. Any guidance on getting internships in high school, as I have tried looking for some, but have not been able to find any? Yes. It's a hard world out here for internships, right? And a lot of the time, right, there are some available, right? I got my Audible internship just because it was more so a local thing, right? So a lot of time it has to do with chance, but there are also ways to show your kind of expertise and to show that you are doing things productive with your time without having an internship, right? Passion projects are a big one, right? And that one is also kind of something that I would say shows a lot more character than an internship does, just because you're doing something on your own that you're passionate about and you're taking that initiative, right? That is something that I help a ton of my students do as well. And whether it's like creating a nonprofit for no-kill shelters, which is what one of my students that got into Duke, that's something that we ended up doing as well, or whether it's doing research independently, getting published in journals, right? That is a huge chunk of time that an internship would usually take, but you're using it to develop something that you're interested in on your own, right? And that shows that is stellar, right? But besides that, obviously there are some really good like college programs, right? You want to be careful with college programs though, because you want to make sure you're not just doing like pay to play programs that are kind of easy to get in. They charge you like $4,000 for half of the summer or whatever the case may be, because a lot of times colleges don't necessarily like those, because a lot of kids put it on their resume and they think, oh, that I did this great program at Stanford or at Harvard or at Yale, and this will carry the weight, right? That is not true. Right. If they see that program there and you haven't built on it in any type of way, there's no kind of profound reasoning as to why you participated in it, then you're not going to like fare well when it comes to admission school, right? Because they know that you just went and paid for a program and did it. But there are some really good college programs out there like MIT RSI, Stanford SUMRAC, and tons of others that you have to have a real resume for. So you need to make sure you're building early, right? Whether it's through a passion project, etc. And then you can get those kind of programs, prestigious programs and rewards. And that makes you very, very well standing, right? So I would say the best guide to getting a good kind of summer program or internship is you have to start early. You have to start doing things that kind of make you stand out, so you have an actual resume to show them by the time it comes to applying at 11th grade. Somebody said, I built a project NGOs at BetterMind Labs to improve food redistribution and it won a competition. How can I position that in college applications so admission officers see it as more than just another project? Great question, right? Because this is what it all comes down to. This is literally it, right? You do something really impactful. It has potential, but you don't know what else to do, right? You don't know how to make it stand out. And that is something that we would have to talk about, like me and you. And that's where the free profile review comes in, like really well, right? Because I need to know a little bit more about you, your background, and the things that you've already done in high school, and how we can possibly use this project that you did for BetterMind Labs and kind of expand on it, right? Because it's great that you did the project, right? But now you need to make it bigger, right? Whether it's like it having community impact, right, or you publicizing why this specific thing can be important, and you possibly getting funding to make more products like this and to have it be a part of different organizations, etc. Right? That's something that we work on together to kind of make sure that you're expanding and you have real impact and value amongst your community and amongst that one project. But yeah, that is 100% something that we need to like talk more about, so I can know a little bit more about you, your goals, and etc. Does that make sense? No problem. I will drop the free profile review link in the chat one more time. Yes, you do have a option to upload a resume while following Common App. I work with my students through that as well. You have your activity sections, which name like every single bit of your. It's kind of like a manual resume, right? You have to kind of put the activities that you've done, and then you have 140 characters to kind of describe what your impact and commitment was. But when it comes to uploading an actual like full resume, I do not believe so. But a resume, one second, a resume should always be one page. So your Common App resume that you upload should 100% be one page. Multiple pages sometimes works, but you always want your resume to be one page, right? So that's something that again we work with. You can make the font like 10.5. We should know what to take off, because a lot of time there's fluff, right? That 100% fluff that you can take out. And yeah, so just make sure that you're making sure that the thing in your descriptions talk about your impact and your commitment, and you're using action verbs as well. In the start, you mentioned about certification could give you some examples of what you can pursue. In the start, you had mentioned about certifications. Give some examples of what you can pursue. Can you rephrase that question? I think in the mention, I think in the beginning I mentioned how certifications can be great. But again, it's a matter of how you build on them, because you going out getting a certification is 100% a great thing, right? But it is also the same as saying, I want you guys to think of it like this, right? You go to college, you get a degree. Cool. You've gotten the degree, you've done your 4 years of work, but at the end of the day, when you want to get a job, there are thousands of other people who have that same exact degree you have, right? Maybe you went to like a better school, right? So now your degree has a little bit more weight, but even at your school, there are thousands of other people who have the same degree that you have. What makes you stand out? If you've already done work outside of that degree, right? If you've expanded on that degree in any other way, right? If you've done your own independent research and got the degree, right? So there's things that you can build on, right? The degree is already impressive, just like how your certification is very impressive. But in order to be the most selective to get into these top colleges, you absolutely need to build on these certifications, right? Whether it's through a project that you have or whether it's through getting multiple publications, etc. Right, you want to make sure that you're going to the next level, and there's always ways to like hit that next level to make you the most competitive you can be, right? I've worked with a lot of competitive students. I've worked this one of the most impressive students I worked with last year. Literally had 20. She took 22 AP exams, got a 5 on all of them. She did protein misfolding research, right? Because she was huge in Science Olympiad, right? She won a lot of Science Olympiad kind of tournaments, but that wasn't enough, right? Her real interest in science was about, diseases like Alzheimer's, cystic fibrosis, etc. And she decided that she knew that it all had to do with proteins not folding correctly, right? So she decided, I really want to do a lot of research on why these protein misfolding diseases happen in the first place. And if the answer is as simple as making sure that proteins fold correctly, why isn't there more energy and innovation happening to prevent diseases like Alzheimer's and cystic fibrosis, right? And she's done that research. She's done it independently. She's gotten it. She didn't even get it published at the time she applied to college, but she talked about how one of her motivating kind of professors was at U Chicago because they are leading the field in that work. And she got into U Chicago early decision, right? Very easy, right? But it's because she kind of continued to build on what she's already done. So that's what's most important. Any other questions before we go? I believe BetterMind Labs will send you all kind of a link to the free profile review. So if you need time to figure out when your student is available, or when your parents are available, because I think there's some students in here too. But yeah, if your parent is available to hop on with you so we can all talk about your profile together, that is useful. But yeah, I hope to see you all soon. Please take advantage of this offer and the value, just because I'll probably be able to give you some key specific ways to sharpen your story that you can 100% implement yourself, right? So there's absolutely no loss. And you want to make sure that you are staying competitive so that you have the brightest future you could possibly have, and end up at the college of your dreams. So any last questions in this last minute before I let you all go? It's been a pleasure, though, and thank you all for sitting through this for an hour, the day after July 4th. I hope you guys enjoyed your holiday.
Thanks, Michael.
Of course. All right. Well, with that being said, I think we're all good. But thank you all. And I will see you all at the free profile reviews, I hope. Thank you. Of course, thank you. Thank you. All right. See you all later. Bye.